Hi, welcome to another Cumulus Cycles JavaScript tutorial. In this video, we'll look at objects and prototype functions. As a review from the last video in this series, objects have properties and methods. If we consider the car example shown here, this object has properties like name, model, and color, and it has methods like start, drive, and stop. And these are all properties and behaviors that a real-world car would have. And that's a good way to think about objects as real-world examples like a car or a house or a person. Unlike when creating JSON object literals, where we use a JSON string to represent the object literal's properties and behaviors, as shown here, when creating an object, we use the new keyword and the object constructor function. Then we could reference the object and set its properties. So in the object literal up here, when we define the object, we also define the property and the values. Here we're defining the object, then referencing the properties on the object and setting the values. As mentioned above, objects can also have methods. So we can add a getAge property to this instance of the person object, which has a value of a function, which when invoked will return this person object's age. And we can also add a setAge property, which is a function will set this person's age to a new value. So if we run this now, we see the age is 35. In programming, when we have methods that get the values of an object's property, we refer to these as getters. And when the method sets the value of an object's property, we call it a setter. Now, as we remember from our conversation on functions, functions can be passed parameters. So in the person setAge property, whose value is a function, we can pass a parameter with a name of new age. Then inside of the function, when we set this person's age equal to a new number, instead of hard coding the 35, we'll set it equal to the value of the parameter passed in. So down here where I asked the person to call its setAge function, I can pass in the value of the age that I want the person to have. So when person setAge is invoked, the function is executed, it's passed the value for the new age. The new age is now the value for this person's age property. And a common approach in programming is to name the parameter the same as the property that we're going to set. So in this example, again, when I call setAge and pass 35, the age in orange has the value of 35, which is referenced by the age in blue. The age in green is this person's age property, which is now set to the value that we passed in the parameter. So now that we have an object that holds a person, let's jump up to the first line and declare an array to hold people. Then, as before, we'll create our person object, set its properties, and declare its methods. Then we'll push it to the people array and log the array. And if we run this, we see we have an array with one element. And if we expand it, we see that the element at position 0 is the person object with its properties and methods. Now, what if we try and add a new person? So up here I have a person named Fubar, age is 21, then I call the setter and pass 35 for the new age. And now I want to create another person for BizBaz and push that person to the people array. And then we'll loop through the people array each time through, printing the element at the current index. Now if we run this, we see two elements, but if we inspect them, we see they both have a first name of Biz, a last name of Baz, the email's the same, and the age is 50. And the reason for this is because we only have one instance of this object named person. So anytime we reference the person's properties, it's the properties of the same person object. So here we're initially setting the first name to Foo, and down here we're not creating a new object for Biz, we're setting the person whose first name is currently Foo to now be Biz. And that's clearly not the behavior that we're looking for. So when we create a person, instead of using the new keyword and calling the object constructor function, we can define our own constructor function for our own objects. So that being said, let's modify our current example. And I'll delete the constant of person that we instantiate using the object constructor function, and we'll look at this new function with a name of person with a capital P that takes 4 parameters. And just a note on the capital P, it's best practice to define your object constructor functions with a capital letter. So here we have a function named person that's going to be used to construct instances of person objects. That's why it's called a constructor function. And the parameters that it takes in are the values for this instance of a person's first name, last name, email, and age. So when I call the person constructor function, passing it the values, it will set this unique instance of a person's first name equal to the first name value that I pass in as the parameter. The same for the last name, email, and age. And it also has a getFullName parameter that's equal to a function which returns the string concatenated from this instance of a person object's first name and this instance of a person object's last name. So down here, I'm creating a constant named foobar to represent one instance of a new person object, calling the person constructor function, passing the values that I want foobar to have. And then I'll push that object to the people array. Then I do the same for BizBaz. And finally, we'll loop through the people array each time through, getting the instance of the person object at the current index and calling its getFullName function. So let's go ahead and run this, and we see the first time through the loop we got foobar, and the second we got BizBaz. So now we have two distinct instances of person objects. The last topic I'd like to cover in this video is prototypes. And in JavaScript, a prototype property allows you to add new methods to an object constructor. So inside of our object constructor function, we have the getFullName property, which value is a function which returns the concatenated first and last name string. What we can do is remove that property and its function from the object constructor function declaration and put it into a prototype function bound to the person object with the name of getFullName. Now, the function declaration still takes first name, last name, email, and age and sets the values of the properties for that unique instance of a person. But any instance of a person object, like foobar or BizBaz, because they're instances of a person object, inherit this new person prototype function called getFullName. So when I call getFullName on the instances of the objects in the array, it inherits the same behavior that we had with the getFullName property declared inside of the constructor function. So let me go ahead and clear the console and run this again, and we should see the same results, which we do. What this does is really two things. It allows us to create a lighter weight instance of an object because the object itself just has the properties, but it also gets by default through inheritance the functionality of the getFullName function. And this is a more common object definition pattern that you'll see with the functionality or the methods implemented inside of prototype functions. So that's what I wanted to cover in this video on JavaScript objects. In the next video, we'll look at persisting data in the browser's local storage between user sessions. I hope to see you there.